Chapter 47: The Final Battle. The sun sank slowly below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold as darkness crept across the land. Long shadows stretched over the landscape, shrouding it in an air of solemn anticipation. Adrian and Serena stood together at the edge of the village, their gazes fixed on the distant horizon where the final confrontation awaited. Behind them, the village lay fortified, its people weary but resolute after countless battles. Though the last of the dark forces had retreated, the silence that followed was not one of peace but of foreboding. Every breath they took seemed to carry the weight of the coming storm, a moment suspended between triumph and the ultimate challenge. The battle ahead would be their greatest test, a clash that would decide more than just their survival. It would shape the destiny of their world. They both knew the stakes, the magnitude of the responsibility they bore, and the sacrifices it might demand. Yet, as the first stars appeared in the night sky, a shared determination sparked between them. Adrian's hand rested instinctively on the hilt of his sword, while Serena felt the steady hum of her magic coursing through her. Together, they had overcome impossible odds, and now, with everything on the line, they would face whatever awaited them with unwavering resolve. The fate of countless lives depended on their courage, and they were ready to meet the challenge head-on. As twilight deepened, Adrian and Serena moved with purpose, rallying their allies for the battle to come. The village's defenders gathered in tight-knit groups, their weapons gleaming faintly in the fading light. The air was heavy with anticipation, charged with the unspoken understanding of what lay ahead. Conversations were hushed, punctuated by the sounds of sharpening blades and the creak of leather armor. Above them, the sky darkened into a velvety canvas, and the first stars began to emerge, casting a serene light that seemed at odds with the turmoil simmering below. The contrast between the tranquil heavens and the storm of emotions within Adrian and Serena was almost unbearable. Each star seemed a distant reminder of hope, yet their thoughts were consumed by the weight of the impending clash. Adrian tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword, his mind running through strategies and contingencies. Beside him, Serena closed her eyes briefly, summoning strength from the depths of her magic and resolve. Though their hearts were heavy, their determination was unyielding. Together, they were the anchor that steadied their forces, a beacon of strength as night descended and the battle loomed ever closer. Adrian stood before their gathered allies, his presence commanding yet steady, the flickering torchlight casting sharp shadows across his determined face. He swept his gaze over the group, a diverse assembly of villagers, seasoned fighters, and magic wielders, each bearing the marks of the battles they had already endured. "We've faced countless challenges," he began, his voice carrying strength and clarity. "Each time, we've stood together, overcoming odds that seemed insurmountable. But tonight, we face the ultimate test, a battle that will decide not just our fates but the fate of the world we call home." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, but the tension in the air remained palpable. Adrian's tone softened slightly, though his conviction did not waver. "This fight demands unity and unshakable resolve. No matter how great the darkness, we must hold fast to the light within us and to each other. Remember why we fight: our families, our future, and the freedom that no enemy can take from us if we stand as one." His words settled over the group like a shield, bolstering their spirits. As his speech ended, a determined silence fell, each person drawing strength from his resolve and preparing to play their part in the battle to come. Serena stepped forward, her silver hair catching the faint starlight as she addressed the assembled allies. Her gaze was unwavering, focused on the faces before her, and her voice carried a calm yet commanding tone. "This final battle will be unlike anything we've encountered," she began, her words cutting through the tense air. "The enemy we face is relentless, and the stakes have never been higher. The Heartstone, the very balance of our world, hangs in the balance. But we are not without strength. We have come this far because of our courage, our unity, and our determination." She let her words sink in for a moment, the gravity of the situation reflected in her determined expression. "Tonight we must give everything we have," she continued, her voice resolute. "Not just for the Heartstone, but for the lives we've fought to protect, for the peace we've dreamed of, and for the world we wish to build beyond this darkness." Stand strong, fight with all your heart, and remember that together, we are unstoppable. A quiet resolve spread through the group as Serena's words kindled a fire in their spirits, preparing them to face the storm that awaited. The night was heavy with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant rumble of approaching forces. The sound grew louder, like a drumbeat of impending doom, sending ripples of tension through the gathered defenders. From the shadows beyond the village's perimeter, shapes began to emerge, twisted forms with glowing eyes that burned with malevolence. These dark creatures, unnatural and menacing, moved with a purpose that sent chills through even the bravest among them. Their presence was suffocating, a tide of darkness threatening to swallow everything in its path. At the forefront of the horde stood Soren, his figure illuminated by the faint, otherworldly glow of the corrupted heartstone in his grasp. The artifact pulsed with a dark, sinister light, its energy radiating like a storm about to break. Soren's aura was commanding, his every movement exuding the raw power of someone who had sacrificed everything for domination. His cold, calculating gaze swept over the defenders, as if already claiming victory. For Adrian, Serena, and their allies, this was the ultimate confrontation, the moment where courage and resolve would be tested against the overwhelming force of darkness. The battlefield stretched across a vast, open valley, the rugged terrain on either side casting jagged shadows under the pale moonlight. The defenders stood in disciplined formation, their weapons at the ready and their faces etched with determination. Adrian and Serena moved among them, offering words of encouragement and final instructions. The valley's openness meant there would be no place to hide, no reprieve from the onslaught they were about to face. Every warrior knew the stakes. Their world's survival depended on their ability to hold the line against an enemy imbued with unnatural power. On the opposite end of the valley, the dark forces began to assemble, a tide of shadowed figures that seemed to grow with every passing moment. Their numbers were overwhelming, a horde bolstered by the corrupted Heartstone's menacing energy. Tendrils of dark power snaked through their ranks, fueling their strength and lending an unnatural ferocity to their movements. The air grew heavier, crackling with tension and malevolence, as the two sides stared each other down across the battlefield. Though outnumbered, Adrian and Serena's forces stood resolute, their unity and shared purpose a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. The air between the two forces crackled with tension, the silence before the storm almost deafening. Every eye was locked on the enemy, every muscle coiled in anticipation. Then, with a sudden, ear-splitting roar, the dark forces surged forward, charging like a tidal wave. Adrian and Serena, standing side by side with their most trusted allies, met the onslaught head-on. Steel clanged against steel as swords collided, while the powerful hum of magic erupted in bursts of blinding light. The battlefield came alive with the sounds of war, a symphony of chaos, where the clash of blades and the roar of spellfire blended into an overwhelming cacophony. Adrian's sword moved in fluid arcs, cutting through the dark creatures that swarmed toward him, each strike a dance of precision and fury. Beside him, Serena summoned the power of the sea, conjuring waves of energy that swept across the battlefield, knocking enemies off their feet and creating barriers of water to shield their forces. The intensity of the battle was unlike any they had faced before, the sheer force of the dark powers testing their every limit. Despite the chaos around them, they moved as one, Adrian's strength and Serena's elemental magic complementing each other, forming an unbreakable bond that held firm in the face of the overwhelming tide. Serena's eyes glinted with determination as she called upon her mermaid abilities, her connection to the sea weaving through her every movement. With a forceful wave of her hand, the ocean's power surged in response, and a massive wave rose from the ground, crashing into the enemy ranks. The wave sent dark creatures tumbling, their formations scattered and broken by the sheer force of the water. The earth trembled beneath her feet as she called forth more waves, each one a torrent of power that disrupted their advance, creating pockets of space for their allies to regroup and retaliate. Beside her, Adrian fought with unmatched ferocity, his sword an extension of his will. Each strike was precise and deadly, slicing through the dark creatures with the fluidity of a well-practiced dance. His eyes never wavered from the enemy, his movements sharp and decisive as he cleared a path through the swarm. Blood and sweat mixed on his brow, but his resolve remained unshaken. The battle raged around them, an unrelenting tide of enemies crashing against their defenses. But with each passing moment, Adrian and Serena's teamwork only grew stronger. They were the heart of the defense, their bond and determination a beacon of strength amid the chaos, pushing through the storm with relentless focus and purpose. Through the chaos of the battlefield, Adrian and Serena carved their way forward, their every step driven by the singular goal of reaching Soren. The dark forces seemed to part for them as they fought with relentless determination, their eyes locked on the figure of their enemy. At the center of the carnage stood Soren, a figure of dark power, his very presence radiating malevolence. He held the corrupted Heartstone in his hands, its ominous glow pulsing with dark energy that spread like a sickness across the battlefield. His eyes never strayed from the stone, and with each pulse, the very air seemed to thicken, the ground beneath their feet trembling with the force of its corrupting influence. Soren's gaze was fixed, unblinking, as he directed his forces with cold precision, his voice cutting through the cacophony of battle like a razor-sharp blade. His dark magic swirled around him, a cloak of power that shielded him from the chaos of the fight. The Heartstone, held firmly in his grasp, seemed to respond to his will, amplifying the dark forces around him. The energy it radiated distorted the air, warping the landscape and adding an unnatural weight to every movement. As Adrian and Serena advanced, their path growing ever more treacherous, they knew that defeating Soren and destroying the Heartstone was the only way to end the nightmare that had gripped their world. As Adrian and Serena neared Soren, a cold smile twisted across his face, his eyes glinting with cruel amusement. The battle raged around them, but it felt as though time had slowed in the presence of the dark figure. Soren's sneer deepened as he watched them approach, his hands tightening around the corrupted Heartstone, which pulsed with an unholy light. His voice rang out, carrying across the battlefield with an eerie resonance, tinged with mockery. "You think you can stop me?" he taunted, his tone dripping with condescension. "The Heartstone's power is beyond anything you could ever imagine. You are nothing against its might. This battle will be your end." His words, filled with dark certainty, hung heavy in the air. The Heartstone thrummed with dark energy, the pulsing light casting strange shadows that seemed to writhe with malevolent life. The air around them thickened, as though the very atmosphere were being drawn into the stone's malignant aura. Soren's confidence was palpable, his every word calculated to undermine their resolve. He stood unyielding, wrapped in the dark power of the stone, his form radiating an intimidating presence that seemed to drain the strength of anyone who dared to face him. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, Adrian and Serena pressed forward, their determination unshaken. Adrian and Serena charged forward, their hearts steeled against the overwhelming darkness that awaited them. Their every step was fueled by a singular purpose: to defeat Soren and protect the world from the corruption of the Heartstone. The final confrontation had come, and there would be no turning back. As they advanced, Soren raised the Heartstone high, channeling its corrupt power. Waves of dark energy rippled through the air, striking with the force of a tempest. The very ground beneath their feet trembled, cracks spreading like veins through the earth as though the land itself was recoiling from the stone's malignant force. Despite the chaos around them, Adrian and Serena remained focused, the bond between them pushing them forward even as the ground beneath them threatened to swallow them whole. Soren's power was unlike anything they had faced before, an oppressive weight that pressed down on them with each wave of dark energy. The air crackled with the raw intensity of his magic, and the shadows seemed to come alive, swirling in every direction, seeking to engulf them. Adrian's sword cut through the air with sharp precision, deflecting the blasts of dark energy, while Serena summoned the power of the sea to shield them, her movements fluid and graceful amidst the onslaught. But each wave of attack grew stronger, more chaotic, as Soren's control over the Heartstone seemed to amplify. The battle had become a brutal test of their strength, not just of body but of spirit, as they fought not only against Soren's power but against the crushing weight of despair he sought to impose on them. Adrian and Serena fought side by side, their movements flowing together as though they were one. Every step, every strike was perfectly timed, a seamless blend of raw strength and honed strategy. Adrian's sword flashed through the air with deadly precision, cutting down the dark creatures that surged toward them, while Serena called upon the power of the sea, weaving currents of water to counter Soren's dark magic. Their synchronized attacks created a barrier against the onslaught, each wave of energy from the Heartstone pushing them further, but neither faltering. The bond between them was palpable, a force that held them steady even as the world around them seemed to crumble beneath the weight of the battle. Despite their flawless coordination, the battle was taking its toll. Each clash of magic sent shockwaves through the air, rattling their bodies and testing their endurance. Adrian's muscles burned with the strain of holding his ground, his blade heavy in his hand as it deflected yet another surge of dark energy. Serena, too, felt the weight of the battle pressing down on her, her mermaid abilities stretching her limits as she summoned wave after wave to protect them. The dark energy surrounding them felt suffocating, and despite their relentless efforts, it was clear that the battle was far from over. They were pushing themselves to their absolute limits, every movement a testament to their determination, but the sheer power of the Heartstone was a challenge they had yet to overcome. Soren's dark forces surged forward with terrifying intensity, their presence overwhelming as they swarmed around Adrian and Serena. The once clear battlefield now seemed to ripple with chaos, the air thick with the crackle of dark magic. Each strike from the enemy sent shockwaves through the ground, and the oppressive energy that filled the space made it difficult to think clearly. The night sky above them had turned an unnatural shade, pulsing with the raw power emanating from the Heartstone, which hovered menacingly in Soren's grasp. The very atmosphere seemed to tremble, as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the outcome of this final clash. The dark forces pressed in on them from every side, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent, but Adrian and Serena remained focused, their resolve unyielding. It was evident that defeating Soren would require more than just their physical strength and skill. The Heartstone's power was beyond anything they had faced, and the forces it commanded were relentless. Adrian's breath came in ragged gasps, his body battered from the constant onslaught, while Serena's magic, though potent, was strained by the sheer volume of dark energy surrounding them. They could no longer rely solely on their weapons or abilities. They had to draw on something deeper. Unity, trust, and the strength of their bond were now their most powerful weapons. Each movement, each decision, had to be made with precision and unwavering conviction. To triumph, they would need not just to fight together, but to be an unbreakable force, standing firm against the tide of darkness that threatened to consume them. In a moment that felt like an eternity, Serena gathered every ounce of her mermaid magic, channeling the raw power of the sea within her. Her body radiated with an ethereal light as she unleashed a surge of energy, a protective barrier forming around them like a shimmering wall of hope. The dark magic that had swarmed them faltered upon contact with the barrier, dissipating into the air with an explosive crackle, leaving only a fragile moment of clarity. The tension lifted, however briefly, as the oppressive energy was momentarily blocked, giving Adrian the opening he needed. His heart pounded as he saw the path ahead of him, the chaos of the battle momentarily silenced by the sheer force of Serena's magic. Seizing the opportunity, Adrian surged forward, his every muscle burning with effort. With a battle cry that echoed across the field, he closed the distance between himself and Soren, his sword raised high. The Heartstone loomed before him, its dark power still pulsating, but Adrian's focus was unwavering. With a swift, precise strike, he aimed directly for the Heartstone, his sword cutting through the air with deadly intent. The impact was forceful, a flash of light bursting forth as the sword made contact with the artifact. In that single, decisive moment, Adrian poured all his strength, hope, and resolve into the strike, aiming not only to defeat Soren but to destroy the heart of the darkness that had plagued their world. Soren's defiance shook the very air as he roared in fury, his body writhing with dark magic that flared around him like a storm. His grip tightened on the Heartstone, desperately trying to hold on to its power, as he unleashed a torrent of shadowy energy to counter Adrian's assault. The ground beneath them cracked and splintered, and the air hummed with the immense pressure of their clash, as if the very fabric of reality was being torn apart. Adrian's sword clashed against Soren's dark forces, each strike a battle of wills, the energy from the Heartstone coursing through both of them. The intensity of the struggle reverberated through their bodies, every moment stretching to its limit as Adrian fought to break through Soren's defenses. With a roar of his own, fueled by the weight of his determination, Adrian summoned all his strength for one final, devastating blow. The sword pierced through the barrage of dark energy, cutting through the heart stone's protective barrier with sheer force. As the blade made contact, a deafening crack echoed across the battlefield, and the heart stone shattered into pieces, sending a shockwave of blinding light and energy spiraling outward. The destructive force of the shattering artifact surged across the valley, throwing back both allies and enemies alike, and shaking the earth itself. In that instant, the dark forces seemed to lose their cohesion, and the oppressive weight of Soren's magic began to dissipate, leaving only the silence of victory in its wake. With the heartstone shattered, the dark magic that had bound the dark forces together began to unravel. The creatures that had once moved with ruthless precision now faltered, their movements sluggish and disjointed as the power that had driven them dissipated into the air. The unnatural energy that had once filled the battlefield ebbed away, leaving only confusion and fear in its wake. The dark creatures, their glowing eyes dimming, stumbled as the strength that had sustained them vanished, and the once unified army splintered into chaos. It was as if the very heart of their power had been ripped from them, leaving them vulnerable and disoriented. The once overwhelming presence of Soren's forces now seemed fragile, their cohesion broken like a shattered mirror. Soren, his face twisted with disbelief and rage, staggered as the surge of power he had wielded began to wane. His grip on the Heartstone had been his last tether to the darkness, and without it, he was no longer the formidable force he had once been. Adrian and Serena, seizing the opportunity, advanced with relentless determination, their movements synchronized in a way that reflected the depth of their bond. Together, they pressed their attack, their swords and magic working in unison to overwhelm Soren. His strength, once near limitless, was now no match for the combined forces of their will, and the darkness that had consumed him seemed to melt away under their relentless assault. As the final remnants of the dark forces were driven from the battlefield, a profound silence settled over the land. The clash of steel and the roar of magic faded, leaving only the sound of heavy breathing and the soft shuffle of weary soldiers. The once chaotic, oppressive atmosphere that had hung in the air was now replaced by an eerie calm, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The ground, scorched and torn by the battle, seemed to sigh in relief, the echoes of violence dissipating into the wind. The night, which had been thick with fear and malice, began to lose its grip on the sky, as the clouds that had gathered in dark, swirling masses began to break apart, revealing the first signs of light. The pale light of dawn slowly crept over the horizon, casting a warm glow across the land and bathing the battlefield in a soft, golden hue. The oppressive darkness that had once filled the skies now seemed distant, as if banished by the arrival of a new day. The once ominous clouds parted, and a few tentative rays of sunlight pierced through, their light reflecting off the bloodied ground, signaling the end of the long and brutal struggle. The battle was over, and with it, the dark threat that had loomed over the world for so long had finally been vanquished. The weight of the battle's conclusion settled on the shoulders of Adrian and Serena, a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and triumph filling their hearts as they surveyed the quiet aftermath. Adrian and Serena stood in the midst of the battlefield, their bodies marked by the ravages of war, bruises, cuts, and the heavy toll of battle. Despite the exhaustion that weighed heavily on their limbs and the fatigue that clouded their thoughts, a sense of triumph filled their hearts. They had fought together through unimaginable odds, their bond strengthened with each challenge they overcame. The echoes of the battle had faded, replaced by the gentle sounds of nature beginning to reclaim the land. The air, once thick with the stench of smoke and dark magic, now felt clear and crisp, carrying the promise of a new beginning. Their world, though scarred, had been spared from the brink of eternal darkness, and the victory they had fought so hard for now lingered in the quiet stillness around them. The weight of their triumph settled over them, the quiet realization of the magnitude of their victory slowly sinking in. The final battle had tested everything: strength, resolve, and their unbreakable unity. Through every strike, every moment of doubt, and every sacrifice, they had remained unwavering in their commitment to protect the world they loved. As they looked toward the horizon, where the first rays of dawn painted the sky in soft hues of pink and gold, they knew that their journey had forever changed them. The future now held the promise of renewal and peace, a time to rebuild and heal the wounds left by the darkness. Together, they stood ready to face whatever new challenges might arise, knowing that as long as they stood side by side, they could conquer anything. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, a warm golden glow bathed the battlefield, casting long shadows and painting the landscape in hues of hope and renewal. The world around them, scarred and battered from the fierce conflict, seemed to exhale a collective sigh of relief. Adrian and Serena stood side by side, their eyes fixed on the horizon as the weight of the battle slowly lifted from their shoulders. The air was cool and still, and for a brief moment, the only sound was the distant rustling of the wind through the trees. Their bodies ached, their muscles sore from the strain of the fight, but in this moment, all of that seemed secondary. The victory they had secured was not just the result of strength, but of their unwavering bond, their shared purpose, and the trust they had built in each other over the course of their journey. The trials they had faced together had been unimaginable, each challenge pushing them further, testing their limits and their resolve. Yet, through it all, they had remained steadfast, their commitment to their cause and to each other unshakable. The battles had been grueling, and the stakes had never been higher, but it was their unity that had ultimately carried them through. They had forged a bond stronger than the fiercest storm, a connection that had given them the strength to overcome even the darkest of forces. As they stood there, taking in the quiet aftermath of their victory, they knew that their journey was far from over. But in that moment, with the sun rising over the world they had saved, they allowed themselves a rare moment of peace, knowing they had triumphed together. "We did it," Serena whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of relief and gratitude as the weight of their victory finally settled in. Her eyes, usually so focused and determined, softened in the warmth of the rising sun, reflecting the calm that had finally returned to the world. The battle was over, the dark forces defeated, and the Heartstone's corrupting influence had been shattered. It was a moment of peace they had fought so hard to attain, a brief pause to honor the journey they had endured together. The silence around them seemed to echo with the memories of the hardships they had faced, the losses, the sacrifices, and the victories that had led them to this point. Serena's heart swelled with a deep, quiet gratitude for the strength they had found within themselves and each other. Adrian stood beside her, his gaze lingering on the horizon, but he nodded slowly in agreement. The words held a weight that neither of them had fully grasped until now. Their world had been saved, but at such a cost. Their bodies bore the bruises of countless battles, their spirits worn from the endless struggle, yet there was an undeniable sense of accomplishment between them. They had not only fought to protect their world but had also discovered the depth of their own resilience, and the strength of their bond. Adrian turned to Serena, a quiet smile tugging at his lips, his voice steady yet filled with the same relief. "Together," he added, his words simple yet powerful, for it had always been their unity, their trust in one another, that had seen them through to the end. Adrian nodded, his gaze fixed firmly on the horizon where the first rays of sunlight began to cast a golden glow over the battlefield. The sight was tranquil now, a stark contrast to the chaos and violence of the night before. His expression, though weary, was resolute, carrying the weight of everything they had endured and accomplished. "We did," he said, his voice steady and reflective, as if the realization of their victory was still sinking in. The world they had fought so fiercely to protect was finally free from the darkness that had threatened to consume it. There was a sense of finality in his words, yet also a glimmer of hope, a recognition that the battle, though over, was only one chapter in the long journey ahead. "And now, we can begin to rebuild and move forward," Adrian continued, his voice carrying a quiet strength. The path ahead would be difficult, but it was one they would walk together, side by side, just as they had through every trial and every victory. The destruction they had witnessed would need to be healed, the scars left behind by the war mended, but the promise of a new beginning lay before them. With each step, they would honor the sacrifices made and forge a future rooted in the peace they had fought for. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but with it came the knowledge that they had the strength, the resolve, and most importantly, each other to face whatever challenges the future might bring. With the final battle behind them, Adrian and Serena stood at the precipice of a new chapter, their eyes fixed on the horizon where the first light of day began to touch the earth. The weight of their victory settled around them like a warm cloak, but beneath it lingered the awareness that their world had been irrevocably changed. The darkness they had fought so hard to dispel had left its mark, but it had also revealed the strength of their resolve, the depth of their connection, and the resilience of the people they had sworn to protect. The peace they had secured was not the end of their journey, but the beginning of something new, an opportunity to rebuild, to heal, and to create a future that would honor the sacrifices made. As the sun's golden rays spread across the land, Adrian and Serena shared a moment of quiet understanding, the promise of what lay ahead shining in their hearts. They had faced their world's ultimate challenge and emerged victorious, but the path forward was still uncertain. They knew that there would be more obstacles, more challenges to overcome, but they also knew that they would face them together, as they always had. Their bond, forged in the heat of battle, had only grown stronger, and as they embraced the new dawn, they were ready to confront whatever the future might hold. With unwavering determination and a shared sense of purpose, they would continue their journey, side by side, no matter what trials awaited them. The future stretched out before them, full of both promise and uncertainty, but Adrian and Serena were undeterred. Their hearts were full of resolve, knowing that the battles they had fought were not only for their survival but for the foundation of a better world. With the darkness vanquished, the world now held the opportunity for renewal, both for the land and for themselves. They had forged a bond of unwavering strength and unity, and they knew that this would be their greatest asset as they moved forward. Together, they would help rebuild the shattered pieces of their world, their shared vision guiding them as they worked alongside the people they had protected. The trials they had faced had only deepened their understanding of each other and strengthened their commitment to the cause. Serena's eyes sparkled with determination as she turned her gaze toward the horizon, where new horizons waited. With Adrian by her side, she felt the weight of the past lift and the thrill of adventure ahead. They had crossed many thresholds together, and now, with the dawn of a new era, they would chart a path forward that was theirs to define. The future was no longer a distant hope, but a tangible promise, one filled with both peace and the endless possibilities that lay beyond. They knew that, no matter what challenges came their way, their bond would always be their greatest strength. Ready for whatever adventures the future held, Adrian and Serena were prepared to face them together, knowing that their unity would be the beacon that guided them toward a brighter tomorrow. Chapter 48: Victory and Loss. The first light of dawn crept over the battlefield, its soft glow contrasting with the destruction that lay scattered across the land. The once violent chaos had subsided, leaving behind the wreckage of battle, crumpled armor, discarded weapons, and the remnants of dark creatures now vanquished. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and earth, mingled with the weariness of those who had fought through the long, brutal hours. The victorious cries of the defenders had faded, leaving only the quiet hum of a world that had momentarily paused. The corrupted Heartstone lay shattered at their feet, its dark influence dissipating with the finality of its destruction. While the victory was undeniable, there was an undeniable heaviness in the air, as though the very land itself mourned the cost of the battle. For Adrian and Serena, the weight of their triumph was tempered by the loss and sacrifice that had come with it. Their bodies ached, their faces were smeared with the grime of battle, but it was the emotional toll that lingered most. They had fought not just for survival but for the very soul of their world, and though the dark forces had been driven back, it had come at a steep price. Allies had fallen, and the scars of the battle would linger long after the dust had settled. As they stood amidst the quiet aftermath, they could feel the grief of the losses they had suffered, each face in the crowd reflecting a mixture of relief and sorrow. The battle was won, but the path to healing would be long, and the weight of their sacrifice would never be far from their hearts. Adrian and Serena stood side by side, their silhouettes etched against the backdrop of a sky that had transformed from dark and oppressive to soft and golden. Their bodies were bruised and battered, the weight of the battle evident in every movement they made. Blood and dirt streaked their faces, their armor scarred and dented from the fierce onslaught. Yet despite the exhaustion that weighed on them, there was a quiet strength in their posture, a shared understanding that they had faced the ultimate challenge and emerged victorious. The land around them, once a battlefield of chaos and violence, now lay still, as if holding its breath in the wake of the storm. The first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the wreckage, illuminating the faces of those who had survived. As they took in the full extent of the devastation, a heavy silence hung in the air. The serenity of the morning seemed to mock the brutality of the night that had just passed. The remnants of the battle, fallen comrades, shattered weapons, and the eerie stillness of the dark forces now vanquished, spoke of both triumph and tragedy. Serena's eyes scanned the scene, her heart aching for those who had not made it through the fight, while Adrian's gaze lingered on the horizon, his mind replaying every moment of the battle. The world had been saved, but at a cost that they both felt deeply. Their victory had come at a steep price, and the weight of it pressed heavily on their hearts, mingling with the quiet relief that the fight was over. Together they knew that while this chapter had closed, the road ahead would demand everything they had left to heal and rebuild. The village, once a peaceful haven, now stood as a testament to the battle that had raged through its heart. The buildings, though intact, bore the marks of destruction, burnt walls, shattered windows, and scorched earth that would take time to heal. The air was heavy with the scent of smoke and the metallic tang of blood, lingering reminders of the fierce struggle that had unfolded in their midst. Survivors moved through the streets with weary steps, tending to the wounded, their faces etched with exhaustion and sorrow. The sight of the fallen defenders, brave souls who had given their lives to protect the village, lingered in the minds of those who remained. The weight of their sacrifice was a burden none would easily shake, and the loss was felt by all. As the villagers came together to honor the fallen, the sense of victory that had once seemed so certain felt distant, clouded by the overwhelming grief of their losses. Even amidst the healing efforts and the rebuilding of what had been broken, there was a palpable silence that hung over the community. It was a sorrow that transcended words, as each person mourned not only the comrades they had lost but also the part of themselves that had been irrevocably changed by the violence. Though the enemy had been defeated and the Heartstone destroyed, the cost of that triumph was not easily measured. In the faces of those who remained, there was no joy in victory, only the quiet, painful acknowledgement that true peace could not be built without first tending to the wounds left by war. Adrian's gaze lingered over the battlefield, his heart aching as he took in the faces of those who had fought so fiercely beside him. The ground was littered with the fallen, heroes whose lives had been taken in the defense of their home. He saw the lifeless expressions of friends and comrades, their sacrifices now marked by the blood-soaked earth beneath them. Each fallen warrior represented not just the loss of life but the unspoken promise of what could have been, the futures they would never live, the dreams they would never fulfill. As he scanned the scene, the weight of their absence settled heavily on his chest, and a quiet grief gripped him. The victory they had fought so hard for now felt like a distant echo, overshadowed by the faces of the lost and the unbearable quiet of a battlefield that had once been filled with life and purpose. The reality of their triumph seemed hollow, a fleeting moment of success amid the overwhelming sorrow that surrounded him. The destruction of the Heartstone, the end of the dark forces, none of it seemed to matter when weighed against the grief and devastation that marked the end of the battle. The victory that should have brought relief instead felt like a cruel reminder of all they had sacrificed. The land, scarred by the conflict, would take years to heal, and the people who had once stood united now had to face the aftermath of their losses. Adrian's heart was torn between the pride of what they had accomplished and the mourning of what had been taken from them. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the ruined battlefield, he couldn't help but wonder if the price of victory had been too high. Serena slowly made her way toward Adrian, her steps heavy with the weight of the battle's aftermath. Her face, though streaked with dirt and blood, held an expression of both relief and sorrow, as if the magnitude of their victory had left her unsure of how to truly feel. She had fought alongside him, shoulder to shoulder, through the chaos and carnage, but now that the dust had settled, the harsh reality of the cost began to sink in. The war had been won, but the price had been steep. The air was thick with the silence of the fallen, the absence of those who had given everything for this moment. As she reached Adrian's side, her gaze drifted over the battlefield, taking in the faces of the wounded and the lifeless. It was clear to her that while the darkness had been vanquished, the scars of the conflict would linger long after the battle had ended. With a deep breath, Serena finally spoke, her voice soft yet weary, as if each word carried the burden of their shared experience. "We won," she said, her tone filled with a bittersweet resolve. "But it feels like a bitter victory." There was no triumph in her voice, only the raw honesty of someone who had fought with everything they had, only to find that the battle's end had not brought the peace they had hoped for. The joy of survival, of having overcome an impossible foe, was overshadowed by the knowledge of how much they had lost. As she stood beside him, Serena's shoulders slumped slightly, the exhaustion of the last hours catching up with her. It wasn't just the physical toll that weighed on her. It was the emotional weight of the lives they had lost, and the uncertain future that stretched out before them. Adrian stood beside Serena, his gaze fixed on the horizon, but his mind was far from the distant land stretching before him. His face was drawn, a mask of exhaustion and grief that mirrored the heaviness in Serena's expression. The weight of their victory, so hard won and so costly, pressed down on him with every passing moment. His hands, still trembling from the battle, clenched at his sides as he scanned the battlefield, taking in the aftermath of what they had just endured. The screams of the wounded, the somber expressions of the survivors, and the vacant stares of those lost, it was all too much to bear. They had achieved what they set out to do, the Heartstone destroyed, the dark forces defeated, but the reality of that success felt like an empty victory. The world had been saved, but at what cost? He turned to Serena, his voice low and thick with emotion as he spoke, his words carrying the weight of a man who had lived through the unimaginable. "We've achieved what we set out to do," he said, his tone laced with both resolve and sorrow. "But the cost has been great. I never imagined that it would come to this." His words hung in the air, a quiet confession of the price they had paid for their triumph. The faces of the fallen, their comrades who had fought and died beside them, haunted him. He had never expected the path to victory to be paved with so much pain, so much loss. The war had been necessary, and yet, as he stood there, the bitterness of it all clung to his every thought. The world was saved, but it had come at a price neither he nor Serena had ever imagined they'd have to pay. Adrian and Serena moved through the village, their steps slow and measured, as they offered words of comfort and gratitude to the survivors. The once vibrant streets, now marred by the scars of battle, seemed quieter than usual, heavy with the weight of the previous night's conflict. The villagers, their faces a mixture of weariness and relief, met them with silent nods and grateful glances, yet their eyes betrayed the deep sorrow they carried for the comrades they had lost. Each word of thanks felt insufficient, hollow in the face of such a profound cost, but Adrian and Serena gave them all they could, a presence that, while marked by exhaustion, still carried the strength of the victory they had earned together. The bonds forged in the heat of battle were now being tested by the long road of recovery that lay ahead. Despite the gratitude in the air, a palpable grief lingered in every corner of the village. The survivors, though alive, were all too aware of the price they had paid for their safety. Families mourned their dead, the fields where children once played now silent and somber. As the villagers gathered together, tending to the wounded and beginning the delicate work of rebuilding, there was a sense of quiet understanding among them. They had endured the worst of it, and emerged victorious. But the pain of their losses would not fade so easily. The rebuilding of their homes would go hand in hand with the healing of their hearts. Adrian and Serena knew that while the battle had been won, the true challenge lay in the days, weeks, and months ahead, as the village began to rebuild not only its walls but its spirit as well. In a quiet corner of the village, Adrian and Serena found a rare moment of solitude, separated from the flurry of activity that had consumed the rest of the village. The sounds of rebuilding and mourning seemed distant here, a muffled backdrop to the weight they carried. They sat side by side, not speaking, but their presence alone was a comfort to one another. The aftermath of the battle hung heavily between them, a shared burden of loss and triumph that neither had fully processed. The silence stretched out, thick with the unspoken words neither of them could find the strength to say. It wasn't the victory they had imagined, nor the kind of peace they had fought for, but it was all that remained after the storm. Adrian's gaze drifted to the ground, his thoughts heavy as he reflected on the lives lost and the sacrifices made. Beside him, Serena sat still, her expression unreadable but her body language tight with unspoken grief. Their fingers brushed lightly, a small, comforting gesture amid the silence. There was no need for words. They both understood the weight of the moment. They had fought for the village, for each other, and for a future that now seemed uncertain, marked by scars that could not be easily healed. Still, in this quiet moment together, there was a shared understanding that, despite the wounds, they had emerged from the darkness as survivors, and perhaps, in time, they would find a way to rebuild not just the world around them, but themselves as well. Serena's voice trembled as she spoke, her words laced with the weight of sorrow that had taken root in her heart. She stared out at the village, her gaze distant, as if trying to make sense of the devastation that had unfolded. "I keep thinking about all the lives that were lost," she said softly, her tone quiet but laden with an aching vulnerability. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, reflecting the pain and exhaustion from the battle. The faces of those who had fought and fallen haunted her thoughts, their sacrifices never far from her mind. The cost of their victory felt unbearable, as if it had come at the price of too many lives, too many brave souls who had believed in something greater than themselves. The silence that followed felt heavy, as if the very air around them had thickened with grief. Serena's shoulders sagged slightly, her expression weary, and for a moment she allowed herself to feel the full weight of their losses. Her words hung in the space between them, a fragile truth they both shared but struggled to comprehend fully. Adrian, too, was lost in thought, feeling the depth of her pain resonate within him. They had won, yes, but in the wake of such loss, it was hard to see their victory as anything other than bittersweet. The world they had saved now stood scarred, and the faces of those who had given their lives would forever be etched in their hearts. Adrian's hand settled gently on Serena's shoulder, offering a small gesture of comfort in the midst of the heavy silence between them. His touch, warm and steady, grounded her in that moment, even as her thoughts swirled with the weight of their shared grief. "It's hard to reconcile the victory with the loss," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. His gaze remained fixed on the village around them, where life was slowly starting to return to a semblance of normalcy, though the scars of the battle would never fade. The quiet hum of rebuilding, of survival, felt like a cruel contrast to the lives that had been lost. Their world had been saved, but at what cost? He knew that they both carried the burden of those sacrifices, a burden that seemed impossible to shake. Serena's heart ached with the same question, and Adrian's words seemed to echo her own unspoken thoughts. "We fought to protect our world, but the price was higher than we ever expected," he continued, his voice strained as if admitting something they both struggled to accept. The heroes they had become, the warriors who had fought with everything they had, could not undo the devastation that had marked their path. It was a bitter truth they had to live with, the knowledge that the cost of their victory had been measured in lives, in futures lost, and in the fragments of dreams left scattered in the wake of war. The pain of that realization settled heavily between them, but in their shared sorrow, they found a quiet strength, a reminder that they were not alone in carrying the weight of the past. Serena exhaled slowly, her breath shaky as she tried to steady herself amidst the turmoil of emotions crashing within her. Her eyes wandered across the village, taking in the broken but healing landscape, as if searching for some sign of meaning in the destruction that surrounded them. "We've been through so much together," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of their shared experiences. "And I've come to realize how much we've grown, how far we've come despite the odds." Her gaze met Adrian's, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond they had forged in the fires of battle, of the strength they had drawn from each other. Yet, despite that growth, despite the victories they had claimed, the loss they had just endured felt overwhelming. It was as if the weight of every life that had been lost pressed down on her, each sacrifice an unanswered question. Her voice faltered slightly, her thoughts struggling to find clarity. "But this loss, It makes me question everything we've done," she continued, her words heavy with doubt. The pain in her chest tightened, and she felt the gnawing ache of uncertainty creep in. Had the sacrifices been worth it? Had they truly protected the world? Or had they merely delayed the inevitable? Every step they had taken, every battle they had fought, now seemed tainted by the lives that had been lost. The victory they had earned felt fragile, too costly, and Serena was left grappling with a profound sense of grief that overshadowed the triumph. Her hands clenched into fists as she tried to make sense of it all. But in the silence, she knew that no easy answers would come. She had always fought for something greater than herself, but in this moment, that cause felt more elusive than ever. Adrian's eyes met hers, his gaze steady but tinged with sorrow. There was a quiet understanding between them, a shared grief that they both carried, but also an unspoken resolve that neither of them could ignore. "It's natural to feel that way," he said, his voice softer than usual, filled with empathy. His words lingered in the stillness between them, an acknowledgement of the weight of their journey. He reached out, gently resting a hand on hers, as if to offer some measure of comfort. "The cost of our actions has to be faced, and we both know that. There's no easy way around it." The pain of their losses wasn't something that could be erased, but Adrian knew that their path forward wasn't one of denial. They had to confront the consequences, not only of their victories but of the lives that had been lost along the way. His expression shifted, a quiet determination flickering behind his eyes. "We have to find a way to move forward," he continued, his voice steady as he spoke the words that neither of them had wanted to acknowledge. "Our growth comes from learning to live with these experiences, from finding meaning in them, even when it feels impossible." Adrian's hand tightened briefly around hers, grounding her in that moment of shared resolve. The road ahead would be fraught with pain, but it would also be paved with the lessons they had learned and the strength they had found within each other. Serena, despite the ache in her heart, felt a flicker of hope as his words settled in, a reminder that they could still shape their future, even after all they had endured. They sat together in the quiet corner of the village, their minds heavy with the memories of the fallen. In the soft stillness, their thoughts lingered on the faces of those they had fought alongside, the friends and allies whose sacrifices had paved the way for their victory. Each loss was a wound that would never fully heal, but in this moment of silence, both Adrian and Serena allowed themselves to grieve in the solitude of their shared space. The weight of their thoughts pressed down on them, yet there was an unspoken comfort in simply being together, knowing that their bond was now a silent testament to all that had been lost and gained. The battlefield, with its echoes of violence and sacrifice, felt far away, yet the memory of the battle clung to them both, a reminder of the fragility of life and the price of peace. As they sat in the quiet aftermath, their connection to one another felt deeper than ever. The trials they had faced together, each harrowing moment, every hardship endured, had not only tested their physical strength but had also forged an unbreakable emotional bond between them. In the crucible of battle, their understanding of one another had grown, and what had once been a partnership of necessity had blossomed into something far more profound. Serena, her thoughts lingering on the people they had lost, looked at Adrian, seeing not just the man who had fought beside her, but the one who had become her anchor in a world that had been shaken to its core. Adrian, too, could feel the subtle shift in their relationship, a deepened connection born from their shared experiences. Words were unnecessary, for their hearts spoke in the quiet language of mutual understanding, and in that moment, they knew they would carry each other through whatever came next. As the day stretched on, the village began to recover from the brutal toll of the battle. The once broken homes and charred structures slowly took shape again as survivors worked side by side, hands busy with repairs and hearts weighed down by grief. Yet, amidst the rubble, there was a palpable sense of unity, as the villagers found strength in each other's company. Those who had lost loved ones shared stories, offering solace and understanding, while others rebuilt with a quiet determination that spoke volumes. Adrian and Serena, though weary from the battle, did not hesitate to lend their hands, their presence a symbol of resilience and hope. Together, they worked alongside the villagers, each task a small but important step toward healing. It was a shared effort, one that transcended words, as they honored the fallen not just with memorials, but with their commitment to restoring life to the village they had fought to protect. In every movement, from mending broken walls to planting seeds in the now scarred earth, there was a quiet resolve. The air, still thick with the remnants of sorrow, began to feel lighter as the day unfolded. Adrian and Serena were no longer just warriors. They had become part of the very fabric of the village, their determination to rebuild a reflection of the unity that had carried them through the battle. Their actions were a promise that despite the losses, there was still much worth fighting for. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the work still ahead, Adrian and Serena paused for a moment, their eyes meeting across the square. In that shared look, there was no need for words. The journey ahead was uncertain, but together, they would face it, just as they had faced everything before. The village, once broken, was healing, and so were they. In the weeks that followed, Adrian and Serena poured themselves into the restoration of the village, tirelessly rebuilding what had been lost in the wake of the battle. Each day was a blend of physical labor and emotional healing, as they worked alongside the villagers to mend homes, clear debris, and restore the land. The once wounded village slowly transformed, its scars fading with each brick laid and each seed planted. Though the work was exhausting, there was a sense of satisfaction in the tangible progress they made, and every small victory in the restoration felt like a step toward reclaiming the future. The Heartstone's legacy, too, was a part of this rebuilding process. Its power, though no longer corrupted, was kept as a symbol of the village's resilience and the sacrifices made to protect it. It stood in the heart of the village, a reminder of their triumph, not over the forces of darkness, but over the grief and destruction that had once threatened to consume them. Through the long days of labor, Adrian and Serena found solace in each other's company, their bond growing stronger with every challenge they faced. The journey they had endured together had shaped them in ways they had not anticipated, and they leaned on one another not just for strength, but for understanding. Their shared purpose, the mission to restore and protect what they loved, became their anchor in the midst of the rebuilding. It was in these quiet moments of reflection, as they worked side by side, that they found peace, not just in the physical restoration of the village, but in the emotional healing that had to happen within themselves. The world around them was shifting, but they had changed, too. The bonds they had forged through their trials were unbreakable, and they knew, deep down, that their journey was far from over. Whatever came next, they would face it together, united in purpose and in heart. Victory had come at a steep price, but with it had come profound growth and understanding. Adrian and Serena had faced their deepest fears of loss, of failure, and of a world consumed by darkness, and yet, against all odds, they had risen above them. The battles they had fought were not just against external forces, but against the emotional and psychological struggles within themselves. They had been tested in ways they never could have anticipated, and each challenge had chipped away at their former selves, shaping them into something more resilient. Their journey had been one of sacrifice, and although the weight of their losses lingered, they had emerged with a deeper appreciation for life, for each other, and for the world they had fought so hard to protect. They had learned the true meaning of strength, not just in battle, but in vulnerability, and in the willingness to face the consequences of their choices. As they stood together, looking at the world they had saved, they realized that the price of victory was not just the lives lost or the scars they carried, but the transformation they had undergone. The person they had been before the battle no longer existed. In their place was a pair of warriors bound by shared experience and mutual respect, capable of facing whatever the future might hold. The world was healing, but so were they. They had come to understand that growth wasn't always easy, nor was it always immediate, but it was inevitable. Their bond had been forged in the crucible of war, and it had strengthened with every challenge they overcame. Together, they had found a new sense of purpose, one not just defined by the past, but by the endless possibilities of the future. And as they embraced that future, they knew they would continue to evolve, not as separate individuals, but as a united force, ready for whatever came next. As they looked out over the village, now beginning to recover and thrive, Adrian and Serena felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, tempered by the weight of everything they had endured. The once battered landscape was slowly being restored, the signs of destruction gradually fading as new life took root. Children played in the streets, and the hum of rebuilding efforts filled the air, a stark contrast to the chaos of the recent battle. Despite the peace that was slowly settling in, both Adrian and Serena knew deep down that their journey was far from over. The ultimate test they had faced, one that had pushed them to their limits and forced them to confront their greatest fears, had changed them in ways they could not yet fully comprehend. They had fought for more than just survival. They had fought for the future, for the hope of a world that would heal and grow stronger from the ashes of war. In the quiet moments that followed, they reflected on the sacrifices they had made and the lessons they had learned. The battle had shown them the true meaning of resilience, not the absence of pain or loss, but the ability to rise in spite of it. Their strength had come not just from their skills in combat, but from the emotional bonds they had forged along the way. They had learned the value of vulnerability, of trusting others with their burdens, and of never giving up on what they believed was worth fighting for. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting long shadows over the village, Adrian and Serena understood that this victory was only the beginning. Their journey was far from over, and the road ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges. But whatever came, they would face it together, stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. With the dawn of a new day, Adrian and Serena stood side by side, their silhouettes bathed in the soft, golden light of the morning. The world around them seemed to breathe again, the once destroyed village now beginning to awaken with life. Though the battle had left scars both visible and invisible, there was a palpable shift in the air, a quiet promise of a fresh start. Their victory had come at a steep cost, one that weighed heavily on their hearts, but it had also forged an unbreakable bond between them. They had walked through darkness together, and now, as the sun rose higher, they found themselves standing at the threshold of a new chapter, one that was theirs to shape. The losses they had endured were not easily forgotten, and the memory of the fallen would never leave them. Yet, in the midst of their grief, Adrian and Serena found solace in the strength they had gained, not only as warriors but as partners. Their shared struggles had deepened their understanding of one another, and in turn, had fostered a deeper appreciation for the world they had fought so fiercely to protect. They had learned to value the moments of peace, the quiet beauty of life, and the importance of fighting not just for survival, but for the love of what they had preserved. With their eyes set on the future, they were ready to rebuild, knowing that together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Adrian and Serena stood side by side, their bodies still bearing the marks of battle, they shared a quiet understanding of the road ahead. The world around them was slowly beginning to heal, and with it, their own hearts. The trials they had endured, each one testing their limits, their courage, and their resolve, had forged them into something stronger than they had been before. They were no longer just survivors of a war. They had become beacons of resilience, carrying with them the lessons learned through sacrifice and struggle. Together, they had faced darkness, and together, they had emerged into the light. Their journey had changed them profoundly, and though the future was still shrouded in uncertainty, they knew they could face whatever came next with the strength they had gained from each other and the world they had fought to protect. The path ahead was not without its challenges, and the weight of their responsibilities would never truly lift. Yet, standing together, they found comfort in knowing they were not alone. Their bond, one of unwavering trust and shared purpose, was the foundation upon which they would build their future. With the lessons of their past close to their hearts, they were no longer driven solely by the need to fight. Now they were driven by hope, the hope that they could rebuild what had been broken and face the unknown with a shared determination to create something better. The future was uncertain, but as long as they stood united, Adrian and Serena knew they had the strength to meet it with courage, compassion, and the unwavering belief that their journey was far from over. Chapter 49: Healing and Rebuilding. The days that followed the climactic battle were filled with a sense of urgency and determination as the village began the arduous task of healing and rebuilding. The once beautiful landscape, now marked by the scars of conflict, slowly transformed as the survivors came together to mend what had been broken. Every home, every stone wall, every corner of the village held the weight of the battle's devastation. Adrian and Serena were at the heart of this restoration, offering both physical labor and emotional support. Their efforts were not just about repairing structures, they were about restoring hope, a hope that had been shattered in the wake of so much loss. The weight of their personal wounds mirrored the village's pain, and as they worked side by side with the others, they could feel the shared grief and resilience binding them all together. Though their bodies were battered and their spirits worn, Adrian and Serena threw themselves into the rebuilding process with a quiet resolve. The emotional scars ran deep. Many of their friends and allies had been lost, and the village itself felt the void left behind by those sacrifices. Yet, in the face of such profound loss, there was also a glimmer of hope. The community rallied around one another, finding strength in unity, and Adrian and Serena played a pivotal role in guiding them through the healing process. Their connection to the village, to each other, and to the memory of those who had fallen, fueled their determination. It was clear that while the road to recovery would be long, the spirit of the village, like their own, was unyielding. And together they would rebuild not just the structures, but the very soul of their home. Adrian and Serena devoted their mornings to the tireless work of reconstruction, their hands calloused and their muscles aching from the unrelenting effort. Together with the villagers, they repaired shattered homes, rebuilt walls, and cleared the fields of debris left by the battle's fury. The physical labor was demanding, yet it carried a cathartic rhythm. Each hammer strike and stone laid a step toward reclaiming the village's spirit. The scars of conflict were still visible, but as they worked, those scars began to fade into the backdrop of renewed hope. The sounds of hammers and voices filled the air, replacing the grim echoes of the battlefield with the melody of resilience and determination. The transformation of the once violent battleground into a place of renewal became a collective mission that united everyone. Villagers who had fought to defend their home now worked side by side to rebuild it, their grief slowly giving way to purpose. Adrian and Serena found solace in these shared moments, the weight of their losses lightened by the strength of the community's resolve. The land itself seemed to respond to their efforts, the fields gradually returning to life as if mirroring the people's perseverance. Day by day, the village began to rise from the ashes, a testament to the unwavering bond between those who called it home. The physical labor, though grueling, became a source of purpose and quiet fulfillment for Adrian and Serena. Adrian found a strange solace in the steady rhythm of repairing buildings and mending fences, the repetitive tasks grounding him in a way that words could not. Each plank nailed into place and every fence post secured felt like a small victory, a step toward restoring the village's spirit. The work offered him a chance to reflect, his thoughts swirling with memories of the battle and the lives they had fought so hard to protect. Amid the exhaustion, he felt a sense of accomplishment, an assurance that even amidst loss, they could build something lasting. Serena, on the other hand, used her unique abilities to breathe life back into the wounded land and care for those still recovering. Her magic, once wielded in battle, now manifested in healing and renewal. She helped the soil regain its vitality, coaxing new growth where the earth had been scarred, and tended to the injured with unwavering compassion. For her, the act of rebuilding became a tangible expression of resilience, proof that even after devastation, there was always the possibility of regrowth. Together, their efforts symbolized not only their determination to restore what had been lost but also their commitment to a future forged through unity and hope. In the rare quiet moments between their demanding tasks, Adrian and Serena sought solace in each other's company. They often found a shaded spot beneath a newly restored tree or sat by the banks of a repaired stream, letting the tranquil surroundings ease their weary minds. These moments became their refuge, a space where they could set aside the weight of rebuilding and reflect on everything they had endured. The murmuring water and rustling leaves provided a gentle backdrop as they revisited their experiences, each memory a mix of sorrow for what they had lost and gratitude for what they had preserved. Their conversations were candid and filled with emotion, weaving together the threads of grief, hope, and determination. Serena often spoke of the lives they had saved, finding comfort in the knowledge that their sacrifices had not been in vain. Adrian, in turn, shared his aspirations for the village's future, envisioning a thriving community born from their struggles. Together, they worked through the lingering pain of the battle, their shared words serving as both catharsis and inspiration. In those quiet intervals, they began to heal, drawing strength not just from their surroundings but from the profound bond they had forged through their journey. "We've come a long way," Serena said one afternoon, pausing to wipe her brow with the back of her hand, though it only smeared the dirt across her skin. Her hands, coated in rich earth, moved methodically as she helped replant a garden that had been destroyed during the battle. The vibrant seedlings in her hands stood as symbols of renewal, yet the weight of what still lay ahead lingered in her voice. Her gaze drifted across the village, where other groups worked tirelessly to mend broken homes and clear rubble. "But it feels like there's so much more to do," she added, her tone a mix of resolve and weariness. Adrian, crouched beside her, glanced up from the stone wall he was repairing. He studied her for a moment, noting the determination etched into her expression despite her exhaustion. "There always will be," he said gently, his voice steady. "But look around. Every little thing we're doing matters. Every garden we replant, every stone we set back in place. It's not just about fixing what's broken, it's about giving people hope." His words seemed to echo in the quiet of the afternoon, blending with the soft rustle of leaves and the breeze. Serena nodded, her lips curving into a small, grateful smile as they returned to their work, their shared efforts a quiet testament to their unwavering commitment to rebuilding both the village and themselves. Adrian paused, wiping the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand as he surveyed the progress around them. The village was slowly taking shape again, piece by piece, a testament to the resilience of its people. "The physical rebuilding is only part of it," he said, his voice steady but tinged with introspection. His gaze lingered on a memorial being erected in the village square, a simple but powerful tribute to those who had fallen. "We need to heal emotionally as well. The losses we endured can't be forgotten." His words carried a weight that made Serena look up from her work, her eyes meeting his with a quiet understanding. He crouched beside her, his fingers brushing the dirt as if grounding himself. "But they can be honored," he continued, his tone softening, "by creating something new from the devastation, something that embodies the strength and spirit of those we lost." His words hung in the air for a moment, a shared reflection that neither of them needed to elaborate on. Serena reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his arm, and for a brief moment, they sat in silence, united by the same determination. The act of rebuilding wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was about mending hearts, finding meaning, and carrying forward the legacy of those who had given everything. As they worked side by side, the bond between Adrian and Serena grew unshakable, forged in the fires of their shared struggles. Each moment spent laboring together, lifting beams, planting seeds, or clearing rubble, was a reminder of how far they had come and how deeply their experiences had intertwined their lives. The trials they had endured had stripped away pretense, leaving a raw and honest understanding of one another. They didn't need words to communicate the grief that lingered in their hearts or the determination that drove them forward. Their actions spoke louder than any conversation ever could. In moments of weariness or doubt, they leaned on one another, finding solace in a quiet touch or a glance of encouragement. Adrian was there to steady Serena when her grief threatened to overtake her, and she, in turn, helped him find hope in the small victories of each day's progress. Whether it was rebuilding a shattered home or coaxing new life from the scorched earth, they celebrated every step forward together. Their connection had become a source of strength not only for each other but also for the village, serving as a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable loss, unity and love could prevail. The village transformed into a sanctuary of healing, its scars from the battle softened by the resilience of its people. Memorials were lovingly constructed in quiet corners and central squares, adorned with flowers and mementos left by grieving families and friends. Each stone and plaque bore the names of those who had fallen, a solemn reminder of their sacrifices. The villagers gathered regularly to honor the memories of the lost, sharing stories of their bravery and celebrating the lives they had led. These gatherings, while tinged with sorrow, also fostered a sense of connection and gratitude that bound the community together even more tightly. In the midst of their grief, the villagers found strength in unity, working together to rebuild their homes and lives. Shared labor became a balm for wounded spirits, as neighbors helped one another mend walls, replant gardens, and repair what had been broken. The acts of restoration carried profound meaning, symbolizing not only the physical reconstruction of the village, but also the emotional healing of its people. Amidst the clatter of hammers and the hum of voices, a spirit of solidarity grew, lighting the way toward a future defined not by loss, but by the courage and compassion that had carried them through. Adrian and Serena took time to nurture the personal connections that had been strained or frayed during the chaos of battle. They sought out friends and allies who had stood by their side, extending heartfelt gratitude and rekindling bonds that had been tested by the weight of their shared struggles. Adrian found solace in quiet conversations with those who had fought alongside him, sharing memories of their victories and mourning the losses they had endured together. Serena, with her calm and empathetic nature, offered a listening ear to those who needed it most, her presence a beacon of reassurance amid the lingering shadows of grief. Their efforts went beyond words, as they performed small acts of kindness to reinforce the bonds of trust and camaraderie. Whether helping to rebuild a comrade's home or simply sitting in companionable silence with a grieving friend, Adrian and Serena showed that their care extended far beyond the battlefield. These moments of connection not only healed old wounds but also fortified their relationships, creating a network of support that would endure as they moved forward. Through their actions, they reminded everyone, including themselves, that unity and compassion were as vital to their future as any physical restoration. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and crimson, Adrian and Serena found a moment of solace by the water's edge. The tranquil surface mirrored the vibrant colors of the sunset, creating a shimmering tableau that seemed to bridge the sky and the earth. The distant hum of the village, voices raised in celebration, the rhythmic sounds of tools against wood, and the occasional burst of laughter, faded into the background. Here, at the boundary between land and water, the world felt serene, as though the land itself was exhaling after the trials it had endured. Adrian leaned against a weathered tree trunk, his gaze fixed on the horizon, while Serena crouched by the water, trailing her fingers through the cool surface. The restored land seemed to hum with life around them, the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds blending with the soft lapping of the waves. "It's beautiful," Serena murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian nodded, his expression contemplative. In that quiet moment, amidst the sounds of a world healing, they shared an unspoken understanding, a recognition of the journey they had taken, the burdens they had borne, and the hope that lay ahead. Adrian's gaze swept over the village, his expression thoughtful as he took in the signs of renewal. Houses that had once been battered and broken now stood strong, their walls freshly mended and their windows shining in the warm light of the setting sun. The streets buzzed with activity as villagers worked together, their laughter and conversation a testament to their resilience. Despite the progress, Adrian's voice carried a quiet weight as he spoke. "We've made a lot of progress," he said softly, the words tinged with both pride and resolve. "But there's still more to do." Serena followed his gaze, her hands clasped loosely in her lap as she sat beside him. She could see the same truth in the village that Adrian voiced, the immense strides they had made and the challenges still ahead. "The rebuilding isn't just about the structures," she said after a moment, her tone contemplative. "It's about the people, helping them find hope again, making sure they know they're not alone." Adrian nodded, his jaw tightening slightly as he considered her words. Together, they sat in silence for a while longer, the hum of the village carrying on around them, their hearts united in the understanding that their work was far from finished. Serena nodded, her gaze fixed on the bustling village below. Her expression was thoughtful as she watched children playing near newly restored homes and families working together to mend what had been broken. "Yes," she said softly, her voice carrying a note of quiet strength. "But it's important to recognize how far we've come." She gestured toward the scene before them, the signs of resilience and hope woven into the fabric of daily life. "We've faced so much, and we've come out stronger for it. Every step forward, no matter how small, is a testament to what we've endured and overcome." She turned to Adrian, her eyes reflecting both determination and gratitude. "The journey of healing and rebuilding is ongoing," she continued, her voice steady. "But we're not alone in this. We have each other, and we have this community. Together, we've proven that even in the face of darkness, we can find the light again. Adrian's expression softened, a faint smile breaking through his somber demeanor as her words resonated with him. The weight of the past lingered, but Serena's perspective offered a beacon of hope, reminding them both that progress was not just measured by the distance left to travel but by the strides already taken. Their eyes met, a silent exchange that spoke volumes about the journey they had endured together. In that moment, a profound sense of understanding and connection passed between them, unspoken but deeply felt. The trials of the battle had tested their strength and resolve in ways they could never have anticipated, pushing them to their limits and forcing them to confront their deepest fears. Yet, through the hardship, they had discovered an unyielding bond, forged in the crucible of shared struggle. That bond, tempered by loss and triumph, was now stronger than ever, a source of comfort and strength for both. As they stood there, the world around them seemed more vivid, more precious. The colors of the sunset painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, a stark contrast to the shadowy chaos they had recently faced. The air was filled with the sounds of a community rebuilding, a symphony of resilience and hope. It was a world worth fighting for, a world they now viewed with a renewed sense of appreciation. Together, they had preserved it, not just for themselves but for everyone who called it home. And in that shared purpose, they found not only solace but also a quiet determination to face whatever the future might hold, side by side. As the first stars shimmered in the velvet expanse of the night sky, Adrian and Serena stood side by side, their hearts alight with a quiet determination. Though the battles they had fought had left their mark, they knew their journey was far from over. The path ahead was uncharted, filled with challenges and uncertainties, but also brimming with the promise of new possibilities. Each twinkling star seemed to echo the hope that had carried them through their darkest moments, reminding them that even in the vastness of the unknown, light could always be found. With a shared resolve, they embraced the future that lay before them. The work of healing and rebuilding would continue, not only for their world but within themselves. They understood that their scars, both seen and unseen, were a testament to their resilience and a reminder of the lives they had touched and the bonds they had forged. Together, they would honor those who had been lost by striving to create a world where such sacrifices would not be in vain. Hand in hand, they stepped forward into the night, ready to face whatever awaited them, knowing that as long as they stood together, they could overcome anything. As the village began to bloom once more with life and energy, its scars of conflict gradually fading, Adrian and Serena found a new rhythm in their own lives. The echoes of past trials lingered, but they no longer weighed as heavily. Instead, those memories became part of the foundation upon which they stood, reminders of the strength they had discovered within themselves and in each other. The laughter of children filled the air, gardens thrived with fresh blooms, and the once devastated village streets now bustled with hopeful activity. It was a testament to resilience, a vivid sign that healing was not only possible but thriving. Adrian and Serena embraced the promise of the days ahead with quiet optimism. The hardships they had endured had shaped them, etching a deeper understanding of life's fragility and its beauty. Each step forward was imbued with purpose, their shared journey fortifying their resolve to cherish the peace they had fought so hard to protect. Though uncertainties lay ahead, their renewed spirits and unshakable bond gave them confidence. Together, they were ready to write the next chapter of their lives, one defined not by loss, but by the enduring hope of brighter tomorrows. Chapter 50: A New Era. The first light of dawn spilled across the horizon, painting the rejuvenated village in hues of gold and amber. The once scarred streets now bore the signs of renewal, with rebuilt homes and vibrant gardens standing as symbols of resilience. The gentle murmur of life awakening filled the air, the soft clatter of tools, the laughter of children, and the melodic calls of seabirds returning to the restored coastline. Beyond the village, the reef shimmered under the sun's tender glow, its waters no longer tainted by the darkness that had once threatened to consume it. The peace they had fought so hard to achieve was finally beginning to take root, offering a sense of solace and hope to all who called this place home. Though the trials and tribulations of the past were not forgotten, they now served as a foundation for a stronger, more unified world. The sacrifices made and the lessons learned had fostered a spirit of cooperation that extended beyond the village, weaving bonds between communities once divided by fear and strife. Adrian and Serena stood together at the water's edge, the dawn reflecting in their eyes, a testament to their shared determination. The new era unfolding before them was one of healing and connection, a future forged not just by their efforts but by the collective will of all who had endured. Peace was no longer a distant dream. It was the world they were now building, one sunrise at a time. Adrian and Serena stood quietly at the edge of the village, their eyes drawn to the tranquil expanse of water stretching before them. The once turbulent waves, which had borne witness to fierce battles and bitter struggles, now lapped gently against the shore. The reef, a marvel of restored beauty, shimmered beneath the morning sun, its coral bursting with vivid colors that spoke of life and renewal. Fish darted between the intricate structures, their movements a dance of vitality that mirrored the rejuvenation of the world around them. The scene before them felt like a dream made real, a testament to the resilience of nature and the power of unity. The magic that had once been a source of fear and devastation now pulsed softly through the waters and land, its presence a nurturing force rather than a destructive one. Streams of light wove unseen paths beneath the waves, weaving together the elements of the reef in a symphony of harmony. Adrian could feel its energy, gentle but undeniable, like a heartbeat syncing with his own. Serena, her gaze fixed on the glistening horizon, breathed deeply, letting the serene beauty wash over her. It was a reminder of all they had fought for, a world where balance had been restored and where the scars of the past gave way to the promise of a brighter, more hopeful future. The villagers gathered in the heart of the village, their faces alight with smiles as they celebrated the dawn of a new era. The festival that unfolded was a vivid display of resilience and unity, a tribute to their collective strength and determination. Colorful banners adorned every street, fluttering gently in the breeze as if to signal a fresh beginning. Music filled the air, its lively notes carrying a sense of renewal, while the aroma of roasted meats, spiced breads, and sweet confections wafted through the streets, enticing even the most weary to indulge. Children danced freely, their laughter ringing out like the purest melody, while elders shared stories of hope and reflection with those who gathered around them. Amidst the celebrations, the village seemed to glow with newfound vitality. Neighbors embraced, their bonds strengthened by the hardships they had endured together. The sorrow and strain of the past were not forgotten but were transformed into a shared determination to move forward. Every shared smile, every joyous song, and every plate passed among friends spoke of a community that had chosen to honor its losses by cherishing its triumphs. The festival was more than a celebration. It was a declaration that life, though fragile, was meant to be lived fully, and that together, they could build a future worthy of their sacrifices. Adrian and Serena strolled through the vibrant festival, their presence a beacon of hope and renewal for the village. Everywhere they went, they were met with heartfelt gratitude, villagers pausing to express their thanks with warm smiles and embraces. Children ran up to them, offering freshly picked flowers, while elders shared blessings of prosperity and peace. The marks of their journey, visible in their eyes and their stance, were a testament to their sacrifices, and their unwavering resolve was honored by the very people whose lives they had fought to protect. The atmosphere was one of celebration, but beneath the joy lay a profound acknowledgement of the trials that had led them here. The relationships Adrian and Serena had rebuilt, and the alliances they had forged shone brightly amid the festivities. Delegates from neighboring lands mingled with villagers, their unity reflecting a shared commitment to this newfound era of peace. Conversations flowed freely, brimming with camaraderie and the promise of collaboration. Adrian and Serena's efforts had not only restored the village but had also mended the fractures between communities, creating a tapestry of optimism and strength. As the music played and the laughter of children filled the air, it was clear that their work had inspired a collective spirit, one ready to embrace the future with open hearts and boundless determination. As the festival reached its crescendo, the community gathered in the heart of the village for a ceremony to commemorate the hard-won peace. Lanterns swayed gently in the evening breeze, casting a warm glow over the crowd as voices hushed in anticipation. At the center of it all stood Adrian and Serena, their presence commanding a reverence that transcended words. The village elder stepped forward, her voice trembling with emotion as she spoke of their bravery and sacrifice, recounting the trials they had faced and the leadership they had shown in uniting disparate forces against overwhelming odds. The accolades they received, symbols of courage and gratitude, were met with thunderous applause, a collective outpouring of appreciation from a community that now thrived because of their efforts. The ceremony served as a powerful reminder of the journey that had brought them to this moment. As the elders' words echoed through the night, Adrian and Serena exchanged a glance filled with unspoken understanding. Their achievements were not theirs alone but belonged to everyone who had fought, sacrificed, and endured for the sake of a brighter future. The crowd, diverse yet unified, embodied the very spirit of resilience and camaraderie that had seen them through the darkest days. With each cheer and heartfelt expression of gratitude, the bonds forged through hardship grew stronger, reinforcing the peace that now defined their world. The ceremony wasn't just a celebration of victory. It was a solemn pledge to honor the sacrifices made and to protect the unity they had so valiantly earned. Standing together in the heart of the celebration, Adrian reached for Serena's hand, the simple gesture grounding them amidst the joyous commotion. The colorful banners overhead fluttered in the breeze, their bright hues a stark contrast to the somber skies they had once fought beneath. The glow of lanterns illuminated the sea of smiling faces, each one a testament to survival, resilience, and hope reborn. Adrian's gaze swept over the crowd before turning to Serena, his voice tinged with emotion as he said, "We've come so far. It's hard to believe how much has changed." His words carried the weight of countless struggles and the triumphs that had followed, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey they had endured together. Serena's eyes softened as she met his, her hand tightening around his own. "We have," she agreed, her voice just above a whisper but rich with feeling. She followed his gaze to the villagers, who now danced, laughed, and celebrated without fear. The transformation felt almost surreal, a stark departure from the turmoil and grief that had once defined their lives. Around them, the music swelled, and the aroma of feast and festival filled the air, yet neither seemed distracted from the gravity of the moment. In the faces of their friends and allies, they saw the culmination of their sacrifices, the scars of the past giving way to the promise of a brighter future. Together, they stood as symbols of all that had been achieved, their bond a quiet but powerful testament to the unity and strength that had brought them here. Serena squeezed Adrian's hand, her silver hair catching the glow of the lanterns as her eyes sparkled with a mix of joy and relief. "It's incredible," she said, her voice carrying the weight of both past struggles and present triumph. She glanced toward the horizon, where the reef shimmered under the moonlight, a living testament to their hard-fought victory. The waters, once turbulent and shadowed, now sparkled with life and magic, their brilliance reflecting the rejuvenation of their world. "The reef and our world are flourishing again," she continued, her words filled with quiet awe. "We've worked hard to get here, and every sacrifice feels worth it now that we can see what we've preserved." Adrian's gaze followed hers, lingering on the peaceful scene before them. Around them, the festival's laughter and music swirled like a symphony of hope, underscoring the significance of their achievement. Serena's words resonated deeply, a reminder of the countless challenges they had faced to reach this moment. Yet, there was no bitterness in her tone, only a profound sense of gratitude and purpose. Her expression softened as she turned back to him, her smile a mixture of pride and contentment. "Now we can truly embrace this new era," she said, her hands still clasping his as if anchoring them to the moment. Together, they stood on the cusp of a brighter future, ready to step forward into a world they had helped heal. As the ceremony reached its climax, a sense of reverence settled over the crowd. The villagers, standing shoulder to shoulder with Adrian and Serena, gathered at the water's edge for the traditional rite of renewal. The air was filled with a quiet anticipation as a delicate array of lanterns was placed in their hands, each one meticulously crafted and adorned with symbols of the community's resilience. The lanterns, glowing softly in the twilight, were released into the water, their delicate lights flickering like tiny beacons of hope. As they gently floated away, they mirrored the ripples on the surface of the water, symbolizing the restoration of balance and harmony that had been so hard won. The soft glow of the lanterns illuminated the faces of the villagers, their expressions reflecting a deep sense of peace and unity. The water, once dark and chaotic, now seemed to shimmer with renewed life, the lanterns drifting serenely across its surface like stars coming to life. Adrian and Serena stood together, their hands clasped in quiet solidarity, watching the scene unfold before them. The ritual was a poignant reminder of the journey they had undertaken, the battles fought, and the sacrifices made. It was a moment of closure, yet also a celebration of the unity and hope that now defined their world. With the lanterns drifting far across the water, the village was filled with the promise of a new dawn, one where balance and peace would flourish. As the lanterns drifted gracefully across the water, their soft glow shimmering like stars in the serene expanse, Adrian and Serena stood side by side, the weight of their shared experiences and the beauty of the moment settling over them. The calm waters beneath the lanterns mirrored the tranquility they now felt, a stark contrast to the turbulent past they had faced together. The flickering lights reflected not only the physical restoration of the reef and the village, but also the healing of their spirits, as if the lanterns themselves carried away the remnants of their struggles, leaving only hope in their wake. In this quiet, sacred moment, Adrian and Serena felt the full weight of their journey, a journey that had brought them to this point of peace and renewal. The new era unfolding before them was not just a continuation of their path, but a celebration of all they had accomplished. It was a testament to the power of unity, of coming together in the face of adversity, and emerging stronger for it. As they stood in the presence of the glowing lanterns and the peaceful waters, their hearts swelled with gratitude, knowing that the trials they had endured had led them here. The future stretched out before them, full of promise and potential, and they were ready to embrace it, together. As the evening unfolded, the festival's energy grew ever brighter, with the sounds of music and laughter spilling into the air. The villagers, their spirits lifted by the victory they had shared, danced under the starlit sky, their movements a celebration of the peace they had worked so hard to secure. Around bonfires, elders and children gathered to share stories of the past, weaving tales of courage, resilience, and the triumph of unity. It was a night not just of festivity, but of reflection, as everyone present acknowledged the immense journey they had all taken together, each person and creature playing a role in the transformation of their world. The reef, once marred by darkness and strife, now shimmered in the moonlight, a living testament to the strength of cooperation between all who had fought for its survival. Its waters, once tainted by corruption, had cleared and flourished with life, vibrant coral and schools of fish swimming freely. It had become a symbol of the harmony that now existed between the land, the sea, and the magic that flowed through them all. The bonds that had been forged in battle were now reflected in the world around them, strong, unbreakable, and full of promise for the future. As the celebration carried on into the night, Adrian, Serena, and all who had been part of this journey knew that they had helped create something lasting, something beautiful, a world where peace and unity would endure. As the stars emerged in the deepening sky, casting their gentle light over the calm sea, Adrian and Serena strolled along the shoreline, their steps soft against the cool sand. The air was filled with the lingering warmth of the day's celebration, a sense of peace settling over them both. The echoes of laughter and music from the festival still floated in the distance, but now, in this quiet moment, it was just the two of them, side by side, with the rhythmic sound of the waves lapping at the shore. Their hearts, light with relief and fulfillment, carried the weight of all they had overcome, but there was no trace of regret, only the feeling of a new chapter unfolding. With the moon high above, casting silver beams over the water, they looked out across the horizon, where the ocean met the sky in a seamless blend of blue and black. The future seemed wide open before them, an expanse of possibilities that they would navigate together. The battles they had fought, the losses they had endured, and the bonds they had forged were all behind them, replaced by the certainty that the world they had saved was now on a path of harmony and growth. In each other's company, they found strength, hope, and a shared commitment to the promise of a brighter tomorrow, one they would build together, hand in hand, with the knowledge that whatever came next, they were ready to face it. In the stillness of the evening, Adrian and Serena stood side by side, gazing out over the waters that now reflected the tranquility they had fought so hard to restore. The soft ripples lapped gently at the shore, as if whispering the stories of their journey, the battles, the losses, the sacrifices, and the countless moments that had defined their path. The weight of those memories hung in the air, yet it was no longer a burden. Instead, it had become part of the fabric of who they were, woven into the very essence of their souls. The challenges they had endured, each one seemingly insurmountable at the time, had left their marks, but they were no longer defined by the scars. They had emerged from the crucible stronger, with a deeper understanding of themselves and each other. As the sky deepened into twilight, the world around them felt full of promise. The horizon stretched endlessly before them, symbolizing the boundless possibilities of the future. It was clear now that their strength did not come from fighting alone but from the unwavering unity they had found in one another. It was that unity, their shared purpose and determination, that had been the true force behind the peace they had achieved. The world had changed because they had refused to give up on it, and now, as they looked toward the dawn of a new era, they knew that the future was not just a gift, it was something they had earned together, through every trial and every triumph. With the world now embracing a new era of cooperation and renewal, Adrian and Serena stood at the threshold of a future brimming with possibility. The weight of their past struggles had been lifted, replaced by the promise of new adventures and the chance to build something lasting. The waters, once clouded by conflict, now shimmered with a sense of peace, a reflection of the unity that had been forged through their efforts. Yet, even as the world around them flourished, they knew their story was far from finished. The horizon stretched out before them, an open invitation to continue their journey, to explore the unknown and to face whatever challenges might arise, not as individuals, but as a team. Their hearts were filled with anticipation, not just for the future, but for the journey of growth and discovery that lay ahead. They had learned the power of resilience, the importance of connection, and the strength that came from standing together. With every step forward, they were no longer just survivors of their past, but creators of a new world, a world where their bond, strengthened through trials and triumphs, would guide them. Hand in hand, they knew they were ready for whatever lay ahead, their spirits intertwined and their purpose clear. The future was a vast and uncharted sea, and together they would sail into it with hope, courage, and a shared commitment to building a world that would endure. As the festival lights flickered softly in the evening breeze, casting a warm glow over the village, Adrian and Serena stood together, absorbing the vibrant atmosphere around them. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and joyful chatter, a testament to the community's renewed spirit. Their hearts swelled with a profound sense of fulfillment as they watched the celebrations unfold. The path they had walked, marked by trials, sacrifices, and growth, had brought them to this moment of peace. The world they had fought for was now alive with possibilities, and they felt a deep connection to it, knowing that their efforts had helped shape the dawn of this new era. The future, once uncertain and shadowed by conflict, now glistened with promise. The bonds between people, creatures, and magic had been strengthened, and a lasting sense of unity prevailed. Adrian and Serena exchanged a glance, their eyes reflecting the same hope that filled the air. This moment was not just a victory, it was the beginning of a world where peace could take root and flourish. With the horizon now clear and the weight of their past struggles lifted, they looked ahead with a renewed sense of purpose. The journey was far from over, but the future was theirs to embrace, an endless horizon brimming with new opportunities, all shaped by the love, sacrifice, and determination they had poured into this new beginning.